G'day, folks. AOS Coach is back for 2024, and I am also back from the Las Vegas Open. And in this discussion, I am joined by the winner of the Las Vegas Open for Age of Sigmar 2024, Jeremy Lefebvre, who you might have caught on stream from the nail-biting Warhammer TV. At least you were on stream. I know at least once because I was watching it. If not, you actually probably won the whole day three, right? The whole day three. 3 games. I'm sure you were catching the nail biter with Gavin Grigar and many of the other games. And Jeremy and I are going to talk a little bit about the LVO, but not necessarily just the event, the path to victory, how he thinks about his lists, how he played around the table. And I've got plenty of questions that the Discord community has put to me, as well as things that I want to ask Jeremy, just in regards to how on earth do you win the world's biggest Age of Sigmar tournament? Just under 400 players this year, which is absolutely outstanding. But I'm going to let Jeremy reintroduce himself. You may remember Jeremy coming on the stream 2 years ago, or maybe at least a year ago, talking Phoenician. So no stranger to the AOS channel. G'day, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be back. It's great to be talking about Warhammer.
Mate, it is absolutely one of my favorite things to do is to talk about Warhammer. But I want you to talk to me not just about Warhammer. How does it feel to win the world's biggest Age of Sigmar tournament? As I mentioned, I think the numbers ended around 360 odd, which is still the biggest event that Age of Sigmar's ever had. We've kind of lingered around the 200 mark. Last year's LVO 2023 creeped up to around the early 300s, if I remember correctly. I think we sold around 400 tickets for the LVO, but actually who rocked up and attended, it was around the 260 mark, if I recall. But yeah, how on earth does it feel to win the biggest Warhammer tournament in Age of Sigmar?
It feels great. It was like a lot of work. There was great games and great opponents, and it could have gone any way, but it's just, I've always known I was pretty good at the game, and it feels like vindicated. Like, yeah, I'm kind of know what I'm doing, I guess, when playing the game, and not just getting extremely lucky on all the games. But I think there was skill in a lot of those little games, especially with kind of the list I was playing. And yeah, the award ceremony was great, and I just leaned into it when I don't remember who, but you and 2 other people came and lifted me up with the trophy, and that was fantastic. And
it was a lot of fun.
Great moment.
Dayton, it was Dayton from Party at the All Points, and I've got a photo. I'll send you the photo. I can't remember who was third. We all just jumped in and lifted you up when you got announced, which was really a nice moment. Actually, the TO Tomo took a really nice wide shot photo of like the crowd cheering, and there's like Warhammer stream at the back, and you're lifted up holding your weapon as well. You had you were gifted a weapon from the LVO organizers.
No, and it just felt really nice, and I was just like, yeah, this is great. So, and now after all that comes out, it's like, okay, well, now what? And now I've just kind of been chilling and being like, I'll work on some hobby stuff, maybe catch on some paints. There's nothing I need to be chasing right now. I'll go to some events this year for fun. Maybe bring some different lists that aren't super, super competitive, but are just kind of fun and out of the meta, because I tend to play out of the meta. Not on purpose. It's when I go about my list, it's like, what can I do and what do I have options for?
It must be a really funny feeling, right? Because there's a couple of things that, and we'll talk a little bit about the LVO for anyone who isn't familiar or didn't attend, but let me set the scene first. You have the world's biggest Age of Sigmar tournament to date. You have the end of the ITC season. So over a calendar period, all of the tournaments, especially in America, are contributing to a ranking system, an ITC, and independent tournament circuit. And at the end of it, the people who have the highest amount of points based off their performance at tournaments, both in faction and their their teams, their clubs, as well as individual. There's a big award ceremony as well. So there's a lot riding on, and people see this type of event like the LVO as like the end of the season. Then it's like the so what, right? Do I look at my performance and go, right, I need to get better? Have I done really well? I just want to kind of close that out till the end of the General's Handbook. Or is it time for a switch? And you're like, you know what, my faction didn't quite work for me. Let's, take these learnings and move towards, again, the new GHBs. And now you've also got a target on your head. The likes of Noah, the likes of Gavin, the likes of Tom Guan, they've all got targets on their head because they've done really well or won major events. You've now joined that rank. You now have a target on your head. People are like, oh, that's the guy who won LVO. I'm going to have to, I'm going to take him down so I can brag about it on Facebook.
I hope that they do and bring their A game. Let's have a good game. It's a game with dice. I will not win every game. If I win every game, then the people I'm playing are not trying hard enough.
Mate, your last game was a nail biter. Absolutely watching that. It was an absolute nail biter. And we will talk about all the games and we will go through your list for people like, what's he play? I can't see his list. It's locked. We will get to it. But rewind the clock here for a second, Jericho. Why would a competitive player attend something like the LVO? And maybe my second question is, for those listening who maybe have never been to a tournament, or maybe they've only been to their small local one-day events or a 30 or a 50-player event, why would someone who's either competitive want to come to the LVO, or someone who maybe hasn't entered the tournament scene yet might come to the LVO?
I think it's great meeting all the people and all the energy around the game and the nerds, and you make great friendships. Maybe some tournaments you'll make good friends. You'll start seeing some more people. You make a lot of friends. It lets you be more social as the nerd. You get to see all the armies. It also reinvigorates you to come back and play more games or paint up a different army or increase your painting skill a little bit better. So it just kind of reinvigorates, I think, the entire hobby when you go out and engage in it publicly. Even if you're not very good at the game, I suggest going to an event and playing and just having fun, because there's a lot of people, especially Age of Sigmar, that just come and have fun. Like, you can be totally hosed and still have fun. You can totally win and have fun. You can be totally win and not have fun. There's some of that. But it's just an all-around kind of great, accessible game. And even if you don't really know how to play, just jump in and play in a tournament. All our people will help you play. I actually learned Age of Sigmar at a tournament. Like, my first couple games were at a tournament. And it's just going through the games and people help you out. Like, oh, try this, try that. And I think it's just, the community is great. So being engaging with that and seeing all of those people is amazing.
I want to highlight the word you use, community. That to me is why I attend these types of events. It's why I literally travel halfway there around the world to come to the LVO. Not that it's my goal to win the LVO. I mean, sure, I think everyone aspirationally would say this is the event that I want to win. But when you think about 400 Age of Sigmar players in the same room, going out to dinner, chatting after their games, doing pickup games after games, going to the Warhammer preview, doing all the things, right? It's not just necessarily about the games being played. It's everything around it, and it's the casual conversations. It's bumping into the celebrities of the community, whether it's like the Seasons of Warfolk, whether it's chatting to GW, whether it's looking at your famous paint, your favorite painters, like, Sam Lenz was there, and there's a whole bunch of really cool people. Duncan was walking around as well. So it's all the things that are happening outside of just your 5 games of Warhammer, which an event like LVO is fantastic. Obviously, other tournaments don't have a random Duncan walking around, but you still have that community kind of hanging together and catching up and having drinks and doing things, and then starting relationships after the tournament, the pickup games, the new people, and the conversations. That to me is why I love this community.
Oh yeah, totally. And LVO dials it up to 11. All the other little GTs, they're smaller. even 50 people man GT. It's smaller, it's much more. You get to know the people, and then everyone like gets together and go to LVO. It's just we got like 7 people from Albuquerque to go, which is great. Trying to grow our local scene up here, and yeah.
What's nice as well, you make another really good point, is it's a great camaraderie of your friends from your local community going together as a war band. You know, there's a really nice team kind of collaboration, and that can really lift up your spirit. You have a bad game and your teammates are there, or you know, it's the night of day one, and you're strategizing how you're going to win the next game, or there's so much cool things that happen. And by the way, this is not mutually exclusive to the LVO. You know, Adepticon has the same vibes. You know, Australia has CanCon. There's other events like this, so it's not just LVO. It just I happen to be talking to the winner of the LVO, so this is obviously going to be heavily LVO focused, but not mutually exclusive just to the LVO.
No, and I also recommend going to any team events you can go to, because it's actually even more interesting how all your teammates' game goes and how this went. You get much more engaged and actually want to know how they went, and you can still win if you lose because you're working together as a team. And I think it's built even more camaraderie if you go to a team event. So I'm hoping to see more of those. I know there's some good ones. 2 of my opponents were actually on my team at the Old Town Throwdown, so that is quite funny.
Funny. It's funny you say that. I've actually got a teams tournament coming up, and that's literally what I've been talking to my team about. Like, what do we want to run, and what's the vibe we want to bring? Do we want to try to bring like the most filthiest list? Do we want to just smash? Like, what is it that we want? And there's a lot of fun discussion that's already started to happen. So just +1 to you. But let's talk about like getting to the LVO, right? So we will go through the lists. I swear we will. But I need to get into the head of Jeremy here. I need to understand the craziness, because the last time we spoke on the channel, you had done incredibly well. Correct me if I'm wrong. You had top 8 with Cities of Sigmar. You ran the Phoenician. You may have lost to Gavin. So there might have been a revenge. There might have been a revenge story here at LVO 24. But just to rewind the clock, you run the Phoenician, which I'm pretty sure I said to you, how on earth does this army work? Because it's the only city of the old book I didn't really understand, and I didn't quite really enjoy compared to running a Hallow Heart or a Tempest Eye or a Hammer Hall. It was one of those ones where I'm like, not really sold on this. I'd rather run like Settlers Game. But you've always had quirky, unique cities lists, and the way that you look at the list is very different to maybe other people. So what I want to understand a little bit is about what's your list building philosophy? Like, how do you put together a 2,000 point list? And like, what kind of comes in? Because there's a lot to consider, right? You know, it's power, it's magic, it's battle plans, it's objectives, it's the local meta and the international meta, and the mental load of having to think of all these rules and synergies. And there's so much coming into list building. How do you simplify and settle it into a 2,000 point list?
So I look at it, what can I do? And do I have the tools to deal with any of the boogeyman type armies? And that's not even really related to the meta. That is just, if there's an aggro army that's going to try to rush at you turn 1, do you have some screens? Are you going to go, how do you deal with an all shooting army like Marathian Bow Snakes or KO? Do you have something to deal with that? Do you have a battle plan? Do you have a way you can deploy to make it a game and not just a rock, paper, scissors? So many people build their list and they lean heavily into one thing. They're like, I'm a shooting army, I'm a melee army, and then that pigeonholes you into one thing. If you find something that counters that, you got countered. And so I try to build my list that I can counter everything and have no hard counter. And so just having all these little pieces and toolkits shine in different matches. But in other matches, they're like, why is this here? It's like, because it's good against this other match. And right now, it's a throwaway piece.
So you're looking at your army, not necessarily, let's say, KO. Well, no, not even KO. Like, whatever the strengths of my army is, I'm just going to lean in and just double down on it. KO is just all the shooting, or whatever, right? Like, whatever the army is. Like, there's a lot of different armies who do a lot of things. Like Zinch does a lot of magic, Lumineth does a lot of being jerks, just general things. But you're thinking more about utility and thinking about the roles that certain units play, and maybe having flexibility so that you don't have bad matchups, or you don't feel like you don't have tools to respond, which might have some redundancy in some games, but you are more of that Swiss Army knife type of utility type of list. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, very Swiss Army knife with lots of little tech here and there. And the new Cities book is completely one in deployment and movement. There's nothing else to it really. That is where your Cities games will all come down to. So there's a lot of that, and it just how do you play the game, and how do you lean into how you play the game? So some people have so I like to have all these little pieces and these little layers and little counters here and there, and the order system is great for that. It's also very mentally taxing.
And I will definitely unpack that one with you a little bit later, because one of the things that major tournaments, and I hear this a lot actually, even from the community, is that when you play 5 games of Warhammer, that can be draining, whether it's you standing on your feet, remembering all the rules, trying to think about how you counter your opponent and the battle plan, and there's a lot going on. So rest assured, we will get to mental load, because, and that's partially actually why I brought Cities of Sigmar. You brought Cities of Sigmar. I brought Suns. Because I'm traveling halfway around the world, it's easy to transport. It allows me to talk to a lot of people. It also allows me to go out till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and rock up into the table and still be relatively coherent, as opposed to running my Gits or my Cities, where I think I'd just be completely brain drained, or I have to sacrifice those drinking sessions. So for me, Suns has worked really well as an LVO army. But you're going back to you. It's very much about having tools and resources. And how much does battle plan selection and battle tactics, and how's this all kind of come about? Do you think about, like, this is the army that could do really well, or I don't have the tools to be able to do surround and destroy, and like how does that all kind of come together?
So I don't really look at the battle plans too much. I don't like tailor a list to the battle plans that much, because you'll do some. The LVO's battle plans were. I chose Cities. I almost brought Stormcast, but the battle plans were so bad for Stormcast on that I just was like, no, I'm gonna stay with Cities. That was waffling. I was like, could I bring this? Could I bring that? But no, Cities and tactics. Some people plan all their tactics ahead of time, and I have kind of go, can I do this one? Can I do this one? And I do the hardest one that I can reasonably do first, and then I go down the list. Yeah, some people have, I do this turn 1, this turn, and some missions it's really easy to do surround and destroy, like the small deployment zones. Other ones you're like, okay, well I gotta have something else. I can't do that first turn. Or you sacrifice the first turn.
It all kind of comes together, and you're right. Like I did a video about this a couple of months ago, just in regards to sequencing of battle tactics and making sure you got the right tools. But as you kind of go through, if you could do 5 out of 5 battle tactics, or if you need to try to find a cheap unit, a throwaway, a fast unit, something that get yourself an arcane tome, whatever it is. It's interesting just to hear again the Swiss Army knife, and it obviously played well. And I guess when we get to the lists and your opponents, we'll kind of understand this a little bit more. But how did you find the transition from old Cities to new Cities, being that you are a long-time Phoenician player, or a long-time Cities player, a whole bunch of our stuff? In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, when you top 8 LVO in the past, you had 2 or 3 Phoenixes that are now gone. let alone you might have had Phoenix Guard. I can't remember your list exactly, but I remember, like me, we had a whole bunch of stuff returned to the old world.
The entire list I brought to LVO, except the Assassins, has been removed from the game. So it kind of hurt when they're like, this is the one faction you play, and we're going to remove it and all the models. And I'm like, so going into New Cities, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not. When the book first came out, I did some little test games, and it was kind of odd. And then it's kept kind of twinkering with it, and then the more I kind of twinkered with it and the orders, the more I kind of liked it. But I tried to get the elves to work. I tried to get some of the dwarves, and they're just, the internal balance in that book is so bad. They only want humans. Everything else is bad. There's a couple good elves, but in general, I think they missed a lot of bark with that book. I think there's a couple little things they can do to improve it a lot. Like
it feels half cooked. It feels half cooked. It feels like the humans are nicely well done. You know, when you make like a delicious roast and maybe the potatoes still need a little bit more time in the oven. It feels like the dwarves are the potatoes. You need to go back in the oven. You're not quite ready yet. Give me some more elves. Give me some more dwarves. Or yeet them out completely. Like either make a decision, because
it's not even that. If they actually allowed you to give orders to a hero for any race, but only have the race be able to take the order, would fix, I think, a lot of that problem. You then get some mixed arms lists that can still function without being pigeonholed into one race or another. Like, as soon as you start bringing mixed races, I now know what orders you're doing. I know your strategy. It's on the tabletop. There's nothing hidden.
Yeah, and like, for example, you know, the steam tank, and Gavin, one of your last opponents, was the master of the steam tank. You could easily make that a dwarf steam tank. Like, there's the history of steam tanks, yes, were from the Empire, but that's no longer in Age of Sigmar. A closed hatch, you got no idea who's in that steam tank. So I can see that keyword flexibility coming in a little more. It definitely feels like it's too restrictive and too beneficial to humans.
Yeah, and I've switched from just other tech armies. Before I went, when they announced Phoenician was basically going away, I played Slaanesh for a little while because that new Slaanesh is a lot of fun. I did some God Seekers. I won a couple of GTs with that, and that was a lot of fun. And I almost brought Slaanesh, but I just wanted to have some fun with some of the new city stuff. I got them all painted up. So I'm like, yeah,
I remember that. I remember seeing some of your performances, and I remember going, why is he not Pretenders? And I'm like, oh wait, this is Jeremy. That's why. Everyone else is running Pretenders and you were running Godseekers. So you always have a unique take on a book, which I really appreciate, because, you know, meta lists and ones that you pick up off the internet, they're great. Don't get me wrong. You know, they often do really well and they're refined, but often we can be so biased on not exploring a book in its fullest, and, you know, units that were not very good in the past now become really good because the meta has shifted, or there's been a points reduction, or something has happened that's made old become new.
Well, I think actually what the problem for that is too many people play Math Hammer, and they do, can this do all the damage? And the answer is yes or no. And if the answer is yes, they bring it. If the answer is no, they shelve it. Where really I play Board Hammer, where it's board control and where is this going to be? How is this going to be? Does it need to be able to do maximum damage? No, but it has the maneuverability to do something, or put your opponent in the back foot, or make them something they have to worry about. And so movement shenanigans are great at that. And so both Godseekers and the Misthaven that I'm playing have movement shenanigans.
Yeah, I love Misthaven. I've got like literally 5 boxes of knights up there that I'll eventually build. I just want to run like a cat. I'm a destruction player. I've turned into a destruction player where I just want to just charge and run forward. And knights are so good at that on the counter charge. I'm just.
Knights are so good.
One. They're so good, and like what's also good, and part of this list building is the fact that Gavin and some other people have been really ramping up into the steam tank type of build. There were some really heavy Fusilier type lists, and there might have been a list that ran 70 Fusiliers at LVO. There was one list, I think it was 70. It was absolutely ridiculous. And Cities is such a wide book, and I think a lot of people who are listening to this are in the same kind of mindset. They play Stormcast, they play Slaves to Darkness, they play an army with lots and lots and lots of options. How do you settle? How do you settle on the list?
So people go into one type of list, like the 70 Fusiliers, or you're focusing on a shooting list. Steam tanks actually isn't all shooting. We can get into that later. They have a lot of flexibility. But Cities itself, people think, oh, this is a shooting army. Here's a battle attack for shooting. Here's another order for shooting. It's a shooting army. And really, it's a mixed arms list. You need to be able to shoot, and you need to have melee. You need to bring both. If you only bring one, you are putting half of your tools in the tool shed. And you're like, we're just going to plow the field when really you need to pick some weeds. You're just bulldozing when you don't need to. And it doesn't always work.
I was going to say it's like being, using a Vegas analogy, putting all your chips on the table, like chips on roulette, and it's either black or red. It's black or red, and sometimes you're just going to go in there and you got nothing. And it's funny actually, because your list building mindset is very similar to mine. I like having combinations, and I like having power pairs and power trios, having at least like 3 sources, if not 4 sources of power. But I like having flexibility. I never kind of go in and, like, even when I ran Daughters of Cain, it wasn't just all the bow snakes. You have some witch elves, and you have a combination of witch elf and hero, where you have doubling down always puts you at a massive risk.
For sure. If you bring all shooting and someone brings a really fast aggro, like orc army, and you can unleash out one thing, but then everything else gets in, unless you screened really well, but maybe they took it out on some good charge mortals. And so it just comes down to dice. So you're putting the game in the dice hands, as opposed to how can I mitigate without having to roll dice, because dice are random. Another thing that may not be obvious here, I hate spell casting. I don't like casting spells. They are unreliable, and they will go bad at you at the most fickle times. And that's exactly what happened to Gavin in the final.
Yes. Yeah. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But magic is fickle.
I have one caster. I casted one spell in all of LVO.
Jeremy, put your fidget spinner away.
Yeah.
Put your fidget. You playing with the fidget spinner?
I'm not actually touching the fidget spinner. I'm fiddling with other things.
It's a little fiddler. Maybe 2 more questions before we then move into the list. I really want to unpack this list a little further. One is around Warhammer TV. For most people listening to this, they have not had, or may not get the pleasure of playing on Warhammer TV. And what's it like? Are you, do you even notice that it's there? Is it something that you're paranoid about? Does it change the way that you play? Like, tell me more about this experience.
So this is the first time I've actually played on stream or Warhammer TV. So it was fine, actually. I mostly ignored it was there. You have one of the judge or there asking questions or clarifications on what just happened. Like, oh, who did this? What did that? Because they're not getting our audio, so we're just playing our game. So there's just someone that comes in and checks that. They had some requirements on like what the tables look like, and I didn't actually really notice this till the last game, because no one told me until Gavin that like they want you to roll in this dice box, and I hate dice boxes because I think they slow the game down. If they roll on the edges, you can't always see what the dice is. So I like rolling on the table where it's clean and clear. You can see what you're doing. You could move away out of the way faster. So I always did that. So it wasn't until the last game when they were like rolling the dice box, and I was just like, okay.
See, I feel the opposite. I always want to roll in the dice box because dice go everywhere and they're hitting models and they're not flat and like they're hidden, and I don't know. That's just me.
So
but,
I have little dice and I roll around the table where I roll them. So I try to roll them as most visible to my opponent as possible in the clearest spot possible.
Not everyone does it like you. They roll behind a building. You're like, yeah, these all hit. You're like, I can't see this. Like, what is going on? I'm not accusing anyone of cheating. It's just like sometimes it's hard to see. But
I use really high contrast dice, so it's really easy to see at a glance what it is. And symbols, I hate dice symbols with dice. I have told some opponents that have symbols on 1s and 6s that they cannot use that dice.
One of my opponents in LVO had symbols on his 1s. I'm like, why do you do this? Why do you do this to yourself? Like, stop it. So you didn't notice the stream, like other than like the minor interruptions just to kind of catch up. You didn't find that your gameplay changed. Did you? Certainly had a bunch of crowd on game 3, day 3, where everyone was kind of cheering and watching, and I find really supportive. But overall, didn't notice anything too much.
No, they did a good job of staying out of the way and just letting us play, and then having the comments, and then when they had questions, they'd come in and have the other person, and then they text it to the chat people, and they talk about it on stream. I hadn't watched the stream, so I'm assuming it went well.
I heard it went very well, and I think the commentary team did a really good job. I think much better than last year. I think they were much more insightful with their Age of Sigmar comment. It's hard, like talking about the game, talking about the battle, how it's unfolding when you don't have information being relayed. It's not easy. Like, it is not easy. So I'll give them credit, and they have improved. So good work on the stream. Not perfect, but it's definitely a significant improvement. The last question I want to ask you before I get into your lists, I feel like I'm teasing you, is I mentioned about the fortitude, this mental fortitude, physical and mental, right? Because again, for the people who don't go to tournaments very often or don't play 8 games of Warhammer over 3 days, right? Here's the scoop. Your Age of Sigmar game traditionally goes for 3.5 hours. So you're standing up on your feet approximately for about 12 hours, give or take, including lunch and standing around and pre-game stuff. It's they're big, long days, let alone the things that you do before and after. You're bending over tables constantly, moving models, picking up things. You're constantly, not only your feet hurting, but your back's starting to hurt. You got rules coming out of your ears. I'm trying to think about all of my own internal rules. I'm then trying to think about your rules as my opponent. I'm thinking about the battle plan. I'm thinking about everything that's unfolding. Then, the quality of food, and you're not eating the best types of meals, and you might be a little bit dehydrated. There's a lot of stuff going on, and eventually you start to hit the wall. How do you break through and have that physical and mental fortitude to be as fresh as possible? Do you have any hints or tips or tricks, or how do you go through 8 games of Warhammer and still be energetic and enthusiastic to play Warhammer?
So there's some little tricks I've picked up. 1 is bring cough drops. 2 is after your first game, take some ibuprofen. That also just really helps. It relieves a little bit of the pressure. Remember to sit down whenever you are actually kind of not doing something. Sometimes it feels like, oh, you're disengaged from the game, but it still helps, even if it's a small sit from your game. Make sure you have as much water as you possibly can. At LVO, we bought a giant case of Gatorade, and I had a little rolly cart, and I just had Gatorade at the bottom. So I just would go through Gatorade. A bottle or 2 a game, and that just helps. For lunch, I always had soft pretzels because I love soft pretzels. I would walk all the way across the Rio to the soft pretzel store and get myself 2 or 3 soft pretzels, and then walk back and eat them. That was my lunch ritual for all 3 days.
And here I am eating salads and some chicken tenders as a protein source. Sounds like the food of champions is a salted soft pretzel.
You need the carbs. Your brain's going to be burning all of them, so you need your calories. And then to recharge at the night, get as much steak as you can. So your brain wants the protein and the steak. So I always try to eat a big giant steak in between. If it's a 2-day event, between 2 and 3. Or if it's a 3-day event, I think going into the finals, me and my partner actually went up to the rooftop voodoo, and I had a 16-ounce steak.
That's outstanding. I think the other thing as well is fresh air, like just getting fresh air, going outside, and just, I find that's really helpful.
So the other trick that doesn't work at LVO, just due to the timing, is most hotels I go to when I go to an event have a hot tub. So after your hot day, you go relax in the hot tub. They seem to close those at the Rio during that time of year, so it's very not there, but that is another. Get in the hot tub. It just helps, even if it's for a couple minutes. It just releases all the stress from your muscles that have been tense and all day. So
I think it's always important to think about the endurance and stamina. And like, for example, I bought this water bottle specifically for LVO, so it's for everyone in the world who is an American. I think it's 1.4 liters, which is fair, probably 2 massive Gatorade bottles. If you fill that up once, like that's at least half of the water that you'll need for the day. Yeah. Having proper snacks, like all these things, like, you know, I got protein bars or nuts, or going out and just grabbing little things to keep you not too sugary, not too fatty. I find that's really helpful.
The other trick is eat more calories than you're used to. Your brain burns more calories, and so there have been studies that chess players burn as much calories as a marathon runner. Warhammer is just as exhausting as sitting down and playing a tournament of chess, if not more so. So eat more than you think you need. So you are trying not to be calorie deficit.
Have you ever tried nootropics?
No. Don't know what that is.
It's something that come out of like California in regards to, it's basically like brain food. There's actually a vendor at the LVO who was doing nootropics. It's not illegal or anything. I'm not like asking you to have some drugs. You know, I'm not some shady guy. It's a legal source of like brain. It's like, you know, just make like I research it. I can't tell you what's in it. I'd be making it up at this point. But it's meant to be really good for like your cognitive load and being able to problem solve and keep your mind clear and energized. And you see it a lot with like programmers and people who have like a very heavily mentally taxing role over a long period of time. And it was just interesting that there was a nootropic stand at the LVO. It's something that I've been playing with a little bit. I've also got like one from Ghost. You might know Ghost Lollies. They also do like proteins and things, but they have like a gamer fuel, and it's a nootropic. So something that I'm playing around with a little bit just to have that cognitive clarity. But who knows?
My partner picked up a bottle of that at LVO. I have yet to try it.
The gummies. They were the gummies, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's a black bottle.
Yeah, I've got one over there. Yeah, it's definitely something. If you find like you're mentally drained, especially like when you play like Lumineth or Gits, or there's certain builds where like Zinch where it's like heavily mentally taxing. Not that this is a nootropic show. I was just curious if you took anything like to help.
Nope.
All right. I swear I'm not a drug dealer. I promise, folks. I promise. But what I do deal with is I deal in awesome hobbies. So Jeremy ran Cities of Sigmar. I will show you the list in a minute, but I thought I'd snapshot a little bit about what your army looked like. And I love that you have gone out and got a bit of a mixed force, as you said. No spam Fusiliers, no spamming of steam tanks, no spamming of knights. It's just a nice little well-rounded mixed force. I think you do have 2 command corps, if I remember correctly, but maybe you don't. I can't remember. But you've got a nice little mixture of the folks from the cities.
Yeah, it's try to bring. I think I have 2 units. I have 2 units of command corps and 2 units of knights, but then everything else is a single off. I like bringing all these different things. I played Dark Elves forever, so I try to bring in Dark Elf models whenever it seems appropriate. So the Manticore is the Griffin.
I was going to ask you if that was the old Dark Elf Manticore.
It's the old Dark Elf Manticore. Yeah, and then for my Marshal, the Cavalier Marshal, I got him on a Cold One Night, an old Bretonian. Just riding on a Cold One Night, all up and elevated. Kind of showing it's like, yeah, we're cities, we can mix and match. Let's put some humans on cold ones.
It's funny, actually, I do the opposite. Anything that's like meant to be, like, for example, in the old days, I actually converted my Phoenix Guard and even my Phoenixes into human ones because I feel the same. But here's the list, by the way, for people who don't know the models or maybe want to know a little bit more. It is a Misthaven list. You had your you had a Warforger. You had the Hexbane with his friends. You had the Pontifex. You had the Cavalier Marshal on Steed. You had your Free Guild Marshal on Griffin, which was the General, Grizzled Veteran, Lance, and Sigmarite Warhammer. You had the Vendence. So you had both. But it's packaged now. It used to be one or the other. Now you got to take both. So you got the dad and daughter combo. You had a unit of Steel Helms, 2 units of Cavaliers, a unit of Wild Corp Hunters. You've got Darrel there, the daughter. You've got 2 Command Corps, and you've got the Hexbane Hunters that have to go with Hexbane, wrapped up in a double battle reg for 1970. So you mentioned a little bit about having some utility. What are the things that I need to know about your list? What are the combinations? What are the things that really worked for you? Talk to me more about the thinking behind this particular list, because it's probably not. If people picked up a list, they'd go, what is this?
So, yeah, the Warforger is really there because it has, instead of casting a spell, it can give +1 armor to every time wholly within 12. So it's basically an AoE Mystic Shield and just makes everything a little bit tougher. The spell on it is really good. If you get off, you can do mortals when you roll a 6 to hit for everything wholly within 12. So a lot of people like to run that. And so really, it just sits in the middle of the army, handing out auras and putting up an armor buff to make everything a little bit tankier. So it's kind of like, that's this core of the army as I get, I guess. And then, like I said, other really good combos are the Marshal with the Cavaliers. So when the Marshal charges, he gets strike first, and then he can chain activate Cavaliers, which is really good. The other thing that's really handy is his Finest Hour gives him +3 to charge. And he gives +3 to charge to the Cavaliers. So there's lots of times in a game where if you're going to be hyper aggressive, or I don't want you to be hyper aggressive, on your turn, I will Finest Hour him. So that if you get close to my lines, I could be countercharging you from Cavaliers and the Marshal that are behind my lines with +4 to charge. 3 from himself and then 1 from the Command Corps. And then they'll be striking first. So you're coming in trying to hit me, but if you get too close, then I'll hit you even back harder before you get to go. So that's one of the defensive combos. You can also use it very aggressively. Like if someone is playing cagey and trying to be far away, I can Misthaven them up, so then they both move 2d6 in the hero phase. Then I get the order for +2 moves, and then they move 13 inches. And then I charge with +4 to charge, or +3 if they're too far out of range. So they have a threat range of average around 30 inches to reliably get into something. So I can reach you if you're just playing the castle game, if I need to. And the Griffin is also really fast because it moves 14, so it moves 17 with the move order, and then you can move it up so it can get where it needs to go. And can stay behind the lines. The Wild Corps.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the Wild Corps because it's a unit that people don't talk a lot about, but it's one that I'm fascinated with. And actually, one of the friends of the channel, Austin, he played, I think, at CanCon, which just happened in Australia, did incredibly well. He ran 2 units of Wild Corp hunters, and I think they were reinforced, which was fascinating. Big block of bodies. But tell me more about this unit. I think they're just like an absolute should be in most armies.
So I think they're should be used a lot more. They want to be in cover. So you have to play into cover. So I think bringing too many of them actually it hurts you. Bringing a reinforced unit is really hard unless you already know what your maps are going to be and you know you're going to have huge things of cover. So I like a single unit. They have a pre-game move of 5 inches, which is enough to maybe tiptoe onto objective or change something or do a little screening if need to happen. It never really mattered in any of my games, the pre-game move, but it's there in certain games where it needs it. If they're in cover, their shooting attack has +1 rend, so then they're at rend 2, and the big guy's at rend 3. So they can do some reliable shooting, but they hit on 4s and wound on 4s. So you're only getting like 2 to 3 wounds out of them, unless they spike. But the biggest thing is if they're in cover, people cannot draw line of sight to them. So you cannot shoot them. They also, if you're more than 12 away, you can't see them. I think that mattered in one game. But then they're good to be on an objective. If you get to put cover on a deck, you can go up, and someone has to come deal with them in melee. You do a little unleash hell. They're 1 wound, so they can get healed with the command corps pretty effectively. You're always at least getting some value from that heal. And they have decent melee attacks. Each of the humans has 2 attacks, and the dogs have 3 attacks. So the unit has, I forgot the number, I think it's 40 attack or 30 attacks if they're at full strength. 41 if you get.
It's pure volume. It's absolutely pure volume with that particular unit. While we're talking about damage, I remember when I talked to Gavin when he won the LVO, he was mentioning, one of the really important parts of his list building was having 3 sources of damage, making sure you've got a decent amount of mortal wounds, having a decent amount of rend, and having a decent volume of attacks. So you're able to, regardless if you don't want to be too heavy in rend and you come up against Nighthorn and goes nowhere. At the same time, you want to have certain tools to respond to certain armies. How do you break down the 60 zombies or a massive horde? How do you chip away and do absolute damage to a Gargan? And I'll be curious to hear how you pulled down some Mega Gargants as well. But where are the damage sources? Is this important to you, or are you trading board presence and board control for damage?
So the major damage is the Cavaliers and the Griffin. The Cavaliers can do an astounding amount of damage if you get them on 2s to hit and 2s to wound with +1 attack on the charge. They can. You're sitting at 21 attacks, rend 2, damage 2. So that average, if you get them to 2s and 2s, since I had my triumph every game but 1, which is +1 to wound, which alternates between the Griffin or the Cavaliers. Generally turn 1, maybe turn 2, to try to do as heavy punch as possible, and then they tend to die because they're actually fairly squishy when it comes down to it, because they're only 10 wounds, and I've had them just die to Liberators before. It was hilarious. Not an LVO, but I had a unit of 5 charge, unit of 5 Liberators, and the unit of Cavaliers all died.
That's so sad. That's such a whiff. But you've also got the Pontifex, and you've got Darrel, who are a bit of hero snipers.
So then I have just lots of chip damage. I volume weight of dice kind of damage. You have some big hitters, but then I have just weight of dice. So Hexbane can do some damage. His hunters do a little bit of damage. Pontifex chips you away in combat and wants to be grinding you down. The Vandents do some damage and can do some shooting. The Command Corps actually can do some pretty good damage in combat, especially if you get them with the +1 attack order on your turn. If they're sitting right in the back lines and now they need to come in and clean something up. It's so fun to have the Spy Master or the Assassin who has 1 attack. It's 2s and 2s, red 3, with D6 damage. When you get that to 2 attacks with the command order, it's so fun. I think at one point he did 10 damage to a target. So it's just little bits of damage everywhere that adds up. And I think you see that in my game versus Gavin, because steam tanks are ridiculously tough, but I just had everything trying to chip away at steam tanks.
Yeah, it was
and eventually they went down.
Yeah, it was crazy. I remember watching some of the games, and the steam tanks were on like 1 or 2 wounds left, and I think it was like turn 3. There was this momentum shift where it was like 3 steam tanks all blew up in one go, and we're like, oh my gosh. Prior to that, round 1, round 2, it's like, oh, these steam tanks are still around. Gav's going to win this, and then all of a sudden, just tanks were just dropping like so quickly.
Yeah, we can get into that when we get to that game. Ooh.
All right.
Just having lots of little things and having bodies. So the Wild Corps are really good for getting bodies on objectives, and so are the free-built Stillhelms. The Stillhelms are there to go die and stand on a point because I need a battle line.
Yeah.
I toyed with having 3 Cavaliers as my battle line, but then I didn't have enough bodies to hold objective or screens. So I think the unit of Stillhelms actually rounds out the lists better than tier damage.
One thing I do want to ask you, and then I want to get into your matchup, is the Hexbane Hunters are a really interesting unit, and it's a unit that I've wanted to run for a while. I love the idea. It has a 5-up ward, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
But it also has some abilities like doing extra damage to like demons, undead, and wizards and things like that. Did you find that helped at all or played out? Is that something that you were seeking, or was that just like a nice to have and you wanted the bodies and the 5-up ward?
It's a nice to have. I think when I set it up, you pick a wizard that you then target. They never really like lined up directly against the wizard. The wizard kind of always stayed away from the hunters. So it's some extra damage. And if they're around, they can do some mortals. Since they have their own built-in ward, they can kind of go on their own, or they can beat the screen when Pontifex fails for her prayer, which happens half the time actually. It's a 3-up, but still happens half the time.
Yeah.
So you just have some built-in ward because you need something. Someone's going to do spam mortal wounds, and you need something that you can be like, well, this is going to mess up your math, and that's what the hunters do. Like if I went into an Annihilator spam list, I screen with the hunters, and like Galen, it's like you got to drop mortal wounds to kill these, but now your math is all messed up because they have wards built into them.
Yeah, nice protection against KO as well. You can use the Wild Corp to move forward and kind of create more of a screen. If they wanted to turn 1 you've still got the ward. Again, it's not like this one particular list that just you can see it come together and does one thing really well. It's a combination of tools to respond to your play style, your opponent, being able to prioritize what's valuable and what's not, depending on the battle plan, the opponent, how games unfolding. And again, if I would recommend, if people want to see you put this into action, Warhammer TV, they should still have the stream up. It might be subscriber only now, but if you want to see how this plays out, especially the Gav versus Jeremy game, you will see it in action. It's not like you was doing this incredible amount of damage to lift a steam tank every turn. It was just chipping away slowly, using your board presence to control, and it was an incredible, fun game to watch.
Yeah, I think all 3 of my games are up there against Cruel Boys and Korn, and then Gavin, and all 3 of those were played. My list played slightly differently.
Well, let's get into that. Are you cool to get into that?
Yeah.
All right. Go on.
So this is actually really funny. Before LVO, the last tournament I went to was Old Town Throwdown. It was a team event. My team consisted of Gavin, Tom, Guan, Colt, and Matt Patsby, and me. It was a pretty stacked team.
Very stacked.
Gavin, and Tom on the team. But I started the game playing against Matt, who was on my team, and then I ended the tournament playing with Gavin, who was also on my team.
So maybe if you would have picked a different team, maybe it would have been an easier run.
Maybe. But yeah, Matt's a great guy. This list is not too much of a problem for me. It's lots of shooting. If he can focus fire, he can maybe delete something. But I deployed and won the roll off, so I let him go first, and then he just moved up outside of 24 and did some chip damage shots. But I deployed in such a way that he couldn't chip damage. He had to get closer if he wanted to focus everything on one unit. So he did like 2 damage to Hexbane Hunters. He killed off a Cavalier. He killed some Steel Helms. And then the command core just brought them all back on my turn because he couldn't finish off a unit because he didn't want to get close enough. And then it just came down to I mishavened up and charged Cavaliers and a Griffin and killed some Sharks. And then he won Prio, but he had to take the Prio because if it doesn't take the Prio, I just collapse and kill the rest of his army. And so he tries to counter and do as much damage as he can, but he isn't able to really remove anything. Prime comes and tries to remove the Griffin. The Grizzly veteran makes it really hard for him. And so it just came down to me grinding him out.
Yeah, this is one of those armies that are completely all in. By the way, this was round 1, which was Power Flux, was the battle plan that was game 1. And it goes back to what we were talking about just moments ago about this is an army that is gone in heavy, and it's going to have some really good matchups where the shooting and then the combat and the speed of the Sharks are going to do incredible damage. But they don't have a lot of bodies on the objective. So it's almost like a KO strategy where they're looking to disarm your opponent as quick as possible, reduce the amount of bodies, create some attrition. But because of things like your command corp and your wards and things like that, even, the wild corp hunter screening, it does make it potentially a bit more challenging and one that you've picked up. I guess I'm adding this context because if somebody looks at this goes, how does this work? Or how do I beat this list? Because this will wreck you. Like this type of list can wreck you if you don't have appropriate tools.
Yeah, and like in this list, the Wild Corpse actually killed a Shark. Like he charged a Shark on one of its turns, charged Shark with the Wild Corpse and then everything else. And then the Wild Corpse activated them with the Shark and they deleted the Shark with an all-out attack and 30 attacks. It's just a lot of volume of attacks. So they're a dual threat. Okay. That's why I like them over Fusiliers, because they can actually melee.
Was there any other highlights from this game?
Well, the Celestian Prime took 3 turns to die because I got it to 2 wounds, and then he proceeded to make 20 armor saves and 15 ward saves in a row.
Matthew, if you're listening to this, can I have some of your dice, please? I will still never forget the time that I ran the Prime and he got shot off, basically unwounded, by a rattling gun that was warped up. Like I failed basically failed all of my saves. Then it doubled damage because of the sparks, and then I just died. I'm like, you are an idiot, Prime. I hate you.
So, yeah, Matthew was a great opponent. This was a good game.
Cool. So you've won your first game. So far, so good. The next game, and this one is a Nurgle. So very different kind of style. So we've got a befouling host. This is James House. And a fascinating one. Like when I pull this together, I'm like, wow, you've really gone in on Nurgle. You've gone in and drawn from the Plague Sensor Bearers, from Skaven. You've got some Vanguard and from Varangard from Slaves. You've brought in some Blissbarb Seeker allies. You've got your Blight Kings. It's such a fascinating list. And you've really drawn from the Nurgle keyword, excluding the Seekers.
Yeah, I do like this list, and it was kind of a little challenge to go into because he tanks with all the tough Nurgle stuff, and then he has these allies in Varangard or Census Bearers that can do a very good counterpunch and delete whatever got stuck in with the Nurgle. So I think there were 2 key points to this game. He deployed light on one's flank, and I went heavy to go kill the Blight Kings. I brought a unit of Cavaliers and the Griffin over there to just delete the Blight Kings and then absorb the Baron Guard charge. But then the Griffin rolled a 12-inch charge, and so I put it into the Baron Guard and deleted them. And tied up all the Plague Bearers in his backfield.
At 12.
And then that's just something you can't plan for. And then he came charged in, and he was going to tag some Cavaliers and then decided not to, and then the counter charge wrecked him. And Galen had a field day killing Nurglings because he's 4 damage against Nurglings.
By the way, Fountains of Frost was the battle plan that this was being played on. So how did this list work? Because it doesn't feel like a traditional Nurgle list, and you've obviously tapped into the speed of the Bliss Barbs and the Baron Guard. Those Plague Sensor Bearers can absolutely slap. And obviously you got the Black Kings.
So the Black Kings are pretty tough. You want to get all their Nurgle stuck into combat, and then when you start, Nurgle wants to grind you down and be stuck in combat with all these tough things. So the Bliss Barb Seekers work really well into that. They come in and reduce your armor save so he can grind you down better. Or they can combo them with the Baron Guard and get the Bliss Barbs shooting something in the Baron Guard, go and double fight it and help delete it. And you just screen everything with all your Nurgle units and get your powder punch. So I think it's a neat list. I think it's better than most other Nurgle lists I've seen because it's just harder to deal with because it has some counter punch that Nurgle normally doesn't have.
This is the kind of list that I expect from you. It's definitely not a off-the-shelf flies or Plague Bearers and just, using sloppity bar piper or counter-charging with a Glocken. Like this is very much a list techie list. So nice work, James. Love the ingenuity on this one. Any stories or anything else you want to add to this particular game?
Well, he summoned in a slyly body piper, but I don't think it mattered by that point.
You got to rack them up early and get the Nurgle. I love the deep striking of Nurglings, by the way. I think that's such a great little utility piece that I'd love to see more of.
No, it's good. I think the damage Deralia did surprised him when she popped up and did a bunch of damage to the Demon Prince. And it's like, okay, well, he has to run at me. So I put the timer on the clock that he had to come fight me, or Deralia was going to shoot all the demons off the table.
It's a fascinating list. I love someone playing around with the coalition. Good job, James. So, game 3, you are against Marcus Miller, and it is Lines of Communication, and it is an army that is near and dear to my heart so much. It's the exact list that I ran, and probably half the Gargan armies there. It was the King Broad Stomp and four Gargants, Double Gatebreaker, Wall Stomper, Broad, Arcane Tome, Big Eater. Now, this one's an interesting one because you, as we've talked about, don't have a high amount of damage, but you've got a lot of chip damage and you've got a lot of volume. So to pull down a Mega can be challenging because they just sit there, and with the 5-up ward on Broad and the healing, this is going to be a tough one, I imagine.
So I think the map played a lot into this. So it was the objectives in the middle. So he had to bring up Gargants into the middle and sit on the objectives. He went first, had him come up. He came up really good, and then I was positioned more to the right, so that's where Broad and his general were. So he finest ours, his general. So if I go into that, it's going to be really tanky and hard. But with the speed of Misthaven, I pivot, and then I go all the way to the left side, and I hit the other 2 Megas because they're both right next to each other on objectives. So having like 30 bodies, 60 bodies on an objective. And I just go all in on both of those ones. And one of those was the Wizard, and Hexbait did 15 damage by himself. He did like 4 damage in shooting. All his melee went in with 3 damage, and then he stabbed him at the end. So I killed 1 Mega on turn 1 with the Griffin, Cavaliers, and then another unit of Cavaliers on the other. And then the Wizard was actually left at 3. and then I doubled him into 2, and then I finished off the wizard with shooting, and then we made charges and killed his general. So I had killed 3 Gargants by the time he got to go at the bottom of 2. And
that's impressive. Not a lot of armies at the moment have the volume of damage, and that's certainly something that I've experienced. Is Gargants, until recently, people have not worried about. Like, rewind the clock 12 to 18 months ago, and Gargants were the standard bearer of the DPS check. Can I pull down a Mega Gargant a turn? See, if I can't, they're just going to win on battle points at the end of the game because I haven't been able to do enough. You pulling down 1 Mega in turn 1 and being able to pull down 3 by turn 2, but that's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, and so I just kind of felt a little bad for him because it was such a one-sided game that he got to move up Gargants and then he had to pick up the Gargants.
What was his plan? Was his just like get onto the objective and sit on there as long as possible? Was that kind of how it played out?
I think it was get on the objective, stop me from getting points because he put 2 Megas on each point, and also since he put 2 Megas next to each other, if I engage 1, I basically have to engage 2 unless I'm just throwing 1 thing at it, and throwing 1 thing at a Gargant is how you lose to Gargants. So I just had to then just go all in and chest the DPS check, and my dice were pretty good, and his were not on the saves.
Yeah. When you play volume game against Gargants, you really need your saves to be at least average. Sometimes when they're not, they really hurt. But is there anything else, any other stories or anything that you'd mention with the Marcus game on the lines of community? This is, by the way, the last game of day 1.
Yeah, not really. I think turn 1 I stopped one of his all-out defenses with the command core, so his Gargants were saving on 6s, and since he finally soured a different Gargant than the one I went to, which really helps the Gargant survivability. You can be like, no, you got to kill this one. But I think he needed to stay a little farther back and typico onto the objectives.
Yeah. It's a fun game. Like, Gargants want to move forward, but sometimes it's a lot of restraint. And it's interesting because, go on.
Oh, and this is actually my first game I've ever played against Gargants.
Well, lucky you played this game because you literally
played it again, against Jeremy. And playing that other game probably gave me a false sense of how easy Gargants were, because this game was actually a lot tougher. I think just the map helped, and Jeremy was also a really good player. He learned how to deal with some of the counter charges really well. So he would charge in a Gargant and be within 3 of a unit of Cavalier, so I couldn't Cavalier charge. Or, you do the flyover stop and just tag all these units and then just pile away and bring me out of combat. So at the end of the charge phase, I'm in combat, but after he activates his Gargant, I'm not in combat, so then I don't get to activate. So that was really good playing on Jeremy. And he moved up his 1 Gargant. I think it was a big eater, and finally soured it, but it was basically in front of my army, so it's like, okay, well, I have to deal with that. And turn 1, I did not kill it. I threw a bunch of stuff into it, but it was alive at 3 wounds. And so then I didn't want to take the double just because I hadn't done enough damage, but I was not in a good position, and he could come in and piecemeal it. So I had to take the double and then just kill another Gargant and get some damage. So it came down to just actually a very close game of him doing a lot of damage and throwing stuff and deleting units with terrain. But the pivot point was I'd been doing chip damage on Broad for a while, and I got a Blizzard off and got to finish removing Broad. And then he just had 1 Mega left at that point. And so I just threw my entire army onto it and then stood on all and had all the rest of the points. So he had to go through, kill my entire army before he could get to another point. So I went on objective points by just stopping 1 Gargant from going anywhere.
And this would have been the only game that you wouldn't have won the Triumph, because everyone was either 1990, 1980, or even 2000 points. I actually played Jeremy in game 2. It was Sun versus Suns. It was an absolute, what you would expect by 2 Mega Gargant armies going at each other. But I imagine The difference between the last list and this list against you is that the double War Stomper would have been a better matchup into you because they're about volume of attacks and you having a lot of bodies, where the Gatebreaker is definitely would be better against like OBR or a much more elite kind of army, which you are not. So thus probably a much more tighter game. And plus Jeremy was a great opponent.
Yeah, no. And didn't get the triumph on this one, so didn't get to guarantee killing a Mega turn 1. So all those little things.
I am sad for you, Jeremy. I'm so sad for you. So this is your 4th win so far. You haven't lost anything yet. We're about to go into the last game. You didn't play the shadow round, did you? You were not playing the shadow round. No, I didn't think so. The last game against one of Ireland's finest is Mick Wendell, bringing over the Daughters of Cain in Geomantic Pulse. It was game 5. Yep. And Mick, by the way, if you're listening to this, I love you and you're annoying. I thought, do I remove these names? But I thought, no, he's gone to the effort of calling his Shadow Queen Karen and, Marathi Kane, Mary Kane, and he's gone to the effort. I'm like, no, I'm not going to remove it. So Mick came over from Ireland, absolutely had a blast. You hanging out with tough crowd. But how was this? Mick is a really good player as well.
Oh, he's a really good player. I think the problem with this was he didn't know cities. And when I offered to give him a rundown of cities, he declined and said, I'll learn it when you do it. So turn 1, I deleted 10 snakes that are on his backboard with moving Cavaliers and the Griffin up. And then he counters and kills with the Cavaliers. The funniest, and then I put the Griffin into the Witch Elves because I'm trying to delete his unit. He doesn't have a lot of units. And I'm like, he's around the corner. They're going to go to try and destroy. So I send the Griffin over there. The Griffin whips. The Griffin kills 4 Witch Elves and takes 5 damage from the Witch Elves. Oh. Poor Griffin. But then he retreats them, and then the Griffin countercharges and deletes the Witch Elves. And that's just the power of orders that we can hunt you down. If this Griffin's going to go hunt a little small unit, you're not going to be able to get away from it.
So did this end pretty quickly? Was this a...
It ended pretty quickly. So, and then he brings Marathi up and charges in and kills all the Wilder Corps, because I'm sitting on an objective and can do chip damage, so he needs to take them out. But Marathi's had 6 damage by the bottom of 1, because I do 3 on my turn and he takes 3 on his turn. Then he brings his 15 snakes and finishes off all of those Cavaliers and the Marshal. I take top of 1. I bring the other Cavaliers and the Griffin, and I think a Command Corps and the Wilder and the Free Guild Helms, and I smash everything into the 15 Blood Sisters, and I delete them. And then I put 3 more damage on Marathi, and then he charges Marathi in, and kills some stuff, but then Marathi dies. And so, top of 3, he has 10 Kadari.
Yikes.
So, a great player is just the damage output that the cities could do, and he needed to play it a different way, and he just didn't know enough cities to understand that. So we talked about how he should have done it afterwards, and he had some good counterplay to it. But yeah, this is just the newness of the city books.
Was Mick wearing a shirt? I know day 3 he might be a bit more festive and shirtless. Between him and Dayton, I think we might have got like a strip show almost. Well,
he was wearing a shirt. He did have his Ireland flag around for some of the game.
It's a fun list. It was actually interesting to see some Daughters of Cain armies do really well. I know like Dale was doing well. I can't remember if Oliver was running Daughters of Cain. I know there's a couple of Daughters of Cain armies, and despite their position in the meta, and they're not doing quite well. And obviously we had the announcement of the Crone, so people are very excited on what the Crone is going to bring to Daughters. Incredible that you guys are paired up 4-0 essentially going into game 5. So there is faith for the Daughters still.
Yeah, and Marathi can be still a pain to deal with. and he has some cool tricks he can do with her, with the Soul Seeker and the Geminids. It's a good list, and it would surprise a lot of people on what it can do.
Yeah. I mean, once you start losing the Blood Sisters and the Blood Stalkers, you can manage Morathi, and that's the thing, right? As long as you're just chipping away, and the earliest damage you can do to Morathi, if you can put damage on Morathi in turn 1, it only gets easier. But if you can't put damage on her till turn 2 or turn 3, she is the bane of your existence. So the things like the Pontifex obviously works really well here. Some of the other tools that you've got.
I think this is well, I went first 2 games. He made me go first, and that's just what allowed me to then go in and put some damage in and surround baby Morathi with units so that even in his turn, they're probably going to take some damage.
Any other stories?
No, I think it was pretty good. I gave one of the Irish luck stones before the game. I thought it was a trap, so I didn't kiss it. It's like, kiss it for good luck, and I'm just like, I don't know.
To be fair, I don't think I would trust Mick either. Sorry, Mick, but maybe, yeah, I don't know if I trust you that much to kiss your luck stone. We're now on day 3. Day 3 is the cut of the top 8. So as we alluded to a little bit earlier, being that there was just under 400 players, 360 odd, you were always going to have, I think mathematically we worked out that there would be 12, assuming there's no draws or anything.
I think there was 11 5-0s.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say mathematically it works out to be 12 players could go 5-0. But yes, I think you did have a draw or 2, so it meant that there was a shadow round. So basically, there's a top 8, so the top 8 players go into a knockout final. But if there's more 5-0s, or if they need to, there is a 6th game, a shadow round that takes place to determine who makes the cut in the top 8. So not everyone played, as Jeremy's already alluded to. You didn't have to play a shadow round because you were one of the highest performers of the 5 games. Then they cut through, and we are now in the start of day 3, single elimination. If you win, you go through. If you lose, you're out. It's not like the Warhammer Championships where it's double elimination. It's purely single. And you're up against Jacob Brendan. People might have seen on the channel, I had a discussion with Jacob around the Cruel Boys, and it is the Ice Fields. So how's this go? Because he's also double battle reg. You get the triumph at least.
Yeah, so Jacob's a really good player. So it came down to a lot of some dice rolls to determine how things could be set up. I won the dice roll for attacker defender. I was the defender. So let him choose who goes first. And the reason I do that is so he has all these bolt boys, which are the majority of his damage. So I put forests in the middle, cut between the 2 objectives on the ice field, because it's the 3, so that I could sneak some units up and get some cover from the bolt boys. So he can't just delete me all at once. And so going into this game, I just look at it that if I can stall the game long enough or get him out of position that I can actually get into the bolt boys, I can win. Because my grand strategists have, more banners than him. So the longer the game goes on, the more likely I am to get my grand strat. His grand strat is his opponent has to have less than 3 units on the table. I have a lot of units. So the longer I delay the game, the more likely I'm to get my grand strat and he's to fail his grand strat. So I think he has me go first. I send up a couple units. I send up a unit to go grab an objective just to get 5 points to grab because he didn't put enough on it. So I'm just going to kind of go up on points. And then he does a little bit of shuffling to try to shoot those off and delete them. And then I win the prio into turn 2, and I give it to him, so I force him to double me. Also, Cruel Boys, have their dirty tricks. So I think he removed 2 units from me turn 1 and made me have -1 to wound count. So it's like, I don't really want to engage you turn 1. So I don't. So then I make him double me into turn 2. And he's like, well, he has to do a little more shuffling and get a little bit closer because I'm out of range of the Bolt Boys. So, but the Bolt Boys have a couple things to shoot, but they have to get closer. So then he has to branch out. He fails to get choking mist off, which would give me -1 attack, basically army-wide for how I was positioned, which is a big thing.
Mm.
And then bottom of 2, he's kind of all spread out. So I just basically do a full send. I'm pretty close to his lines. He's pretty close to mine. And I just send everything in and see if I can do enough damage to remove enough of his army. Because there's a lot. It's Cruel Boys. They're squishy, but they can do a lot of damage. I don't do a huge amount of damage. I think both Gut Rippers die. I think I kill one of. I put wounds on all the Bolt Boys, but I don't think I finished any one of the units off completely. The Dagrot Stabbers are gone. I think I kill a Shaman. Godsprag lives because the Cavaliers whiffed hard. But Pontifex got in, and that was a big deal because she just gets to go grinding, and I've got her in range like 4 units, including Gotti, so she's just pumping more wounds out. So it kind of becomes a toss-up on who wins Prio into turn 3. If he wins it, can he counterpunch enough to kill me? But I win the Prio, and then I can just finish off the rest of his army. Because he doesn't have any chance to counterpunch because I've already put everything into his line. So he'll have, I think, the Snatch of Boss left. Because it was behind a big piece of terrain and couldn't really get to it.
How did the Gut Rippers go? Because I heard a lot of great stories over the weekend of just, and obviously Bolt Boys. Bolt Boys are known for doing an incredible amount of mortal wounds, but the MVP from LVO, I just keep hearing story after story from various Cruel Boy players and their opponents, is how much damage those Gut Rippers can put out. And they're obviously at a point where they're not ridiculously priced like they used to be. And it's been really nice to see them back on the table where previously they were a borderline tax. And then like let's just put everything else on things that are not Gut Rippers. So any stories that happened from the Gut Rippers, or did you kind of neutralize them pretty quickly?
They were tanky. They're always tankier than they look. Like I've played against. We have a good Cruel Boy player here in Albuquerque, so I've got a good practice into them. So I just kind of know what to expect. Like you might just want to hit them if you're not a hero. So that made them kind of pretty tankier. There's just a lot of wounds, and yeah, if you let them just go to town in the wound aura of the Sled Shaker, they can just start pumping out lots and lots of damage and be around because they're like, oh, it's only 10 little guys, but it's 20 wounds for 150 points that all have 2 attacks apiece, that 6s do 2 mortals. It does add up quite a bit. So that's why I've removed them when I could. The main trick is try to get the Bolt Boys that you can get. But he did some good pile-ins where I probably misactivated and could have had the Griffin delete one of the Bolt Boys. But that was a good play on his part. So yeah, he's Grinning Blades. So that also plays factor, so I can't shoot him. So I couldn't really just play the shooting game because I have to get within 12 to shoot him. So I didn't really do any shooting.
It's a good way to protect those man skewers because again, if you're going to invest into man skewers, most people would go big yellows to get that extra range on the shooting attacks. But being able to protect your heroes, being able to protect your Bolt Boys with the Grinning Blades, really good. And that's why Jacob is probably, I think he might have finished top Cruel Boy player, great player. And again, I love the list tech here.
No, Grinning Blades all the way for Cruel Boys. Big Yellows is a trap. If you want to be competitive, it has to be Grinning Blades.
Yeah, a lot more list tech. Look, Big Yellows is like the KO. It just does what it does, right? You know it's going to be built into shooting. You're just going to shoot. But then once you've done that, if the person can handle you, then you're in trouble. But Grinning Blades has far more utility value.
And respect the Bolt boys. Like, they will do more damage than you think.
Oh,
I think I've mapped out at one point. They are the most cost-effective damage unit in the entire game. Points per damage they do.
In one game I played against
Shooting
them,
game.
I can't remember. Yeah, like I think it was a unit of 9 or 6. I can't remember, but I remember they did like 18 mortal wounds to me, like an incredible amount of spikes. I'm like, this is dumb. Like, why are you doing so many damage to my dragons? Leave them alone. All right. So quarterfinal, you have defeated Jacob. Jacob now gets to hang out with us and chat. You move on to your second last matchup, which is against Fabian, who I'll be talking to later this week as well. Fabian is running Khorne, Reapers of Vengeance, and on the battle plan, Spring the Trap. So second last game, whoever wins this goes to the grand final. Whoever's out is out. Interesting matchup, very different because you've got obviously a bunch of bloodthirsters who can go in and just do absolute damage. Not a lot of wizards, almost no wizards. We'll ignore Fedra's in there, so you do have some wizards you can potentially go after with some of your Hexbane and friends. This is like damage central, but a lot of great tech as well. What are you thinking going into this, and how does this one unfold? This is a cracking matchup.
I wasn't too worried about this because I have a lot of damage that I can get to hidden damage, so if I can get some things out, if I can kind of delay the game, if I can protect my heroes a little bit more so he gets less blood tithes. What's the goal? All that went out the window pretty much when the game started, and I didn't. I got some stuff, but then like a lot of stuff didn't quite connect the way I wanted it to. I think he put Scar Bloodwrath in a building, and so I put like 3 heroes to try to kill it and couldn't kill him for. I think he didn't die till top of 4, and he was in combat since the bottom of 1.
That's impressive. That is very impressive.
And he wants him to die. He just wouldn't die. This was the game that was going to be like Deralia was going to have a field day, but she couldn't hit worth a damn. Like if she connected, she'd be putting 8 damage on the Bloodthirsters a turn. So this is where like the Van Dents are going to have a fun time, but they just didn't this game, but they should have. So just a lot of little tech here and there. We ended up fighting it out in the middle quite a bit, basically on one objective, and then we kind of sidebarred the little 2 other side objectives. It's just like I put Hexbane on one of them. I think he summoned some dogs on the other one, so we were pretty close on points. But yeah, it was just kind of a fastic game. I had an opportunity to maybe kind of dive my Griffin to kill his general, his Bloodthirster, but I like didn't. I just wanted to go in and tie up, so I like took out the Mangalore Fiends and tied up the Bloodletters. And then when he goes, he moves the Bloodthirster up and kills it, which is expected. And then I think he maybe doubles me there. And the thing that I keep forgetting about is, all right, the Bloodthirster turns off Ward. I was like, oh, Pontifex will be fine in this building. No, Bloodthirster comes up and just deletes Pontifex. It's like, oh, you get your Ward now. You just, no save, no Ward. Die. I was like, oh. So that hurt. One of the misplays I also did again is, I was like, oh, he's close enough to the building. I'll bring this command core into the building to get him into combat. They only have a 1-inch reach on most of their attacks, and he was 2-inch. And that was just like the angle of the building that I didn't quite see. So that was kind of a small misplay there. And so he was just getting lots of blood tithes left and right. I think at one point he decided to Brass Meteor my little wizard, my alchemist. So it's on a 3-up, does a 5-up, does a mortal wound. He does 7 mortal wounds on 8 dice. It just deletes her. And that's his grand strat, was basically kill his wizard and kill my wizard. He blows his own wizard up and gets it dead, which is what he does. He tries to go sacrifice it. He sits it on Damned, or he tries to Primal Mist cast it while it's in your army. Lots of little cool pieces he can do.
Once you've achieved Magical Dom, like that Fedra and Fedra's friends is just pure blood tie.
Yeah, just throw them at the blood tithe. The game, I think, came down to pretty close to a grand strat. He summoned in a unit of bloodletters with a banner. So it's like, oh, you only have one banner. But then I was able to rally back a banner on one of the knights. I had one knight left, and I rallied and got 2 back and put the banner back. And then he's like, well, damn.
Nice.
That's just
How did
a clutch rally.
How did the bloodletters go? Because they have recently started coming back into fashion, and they can do damage, especially on the charge. They can do a lot of damage, especially mortal wound damage. Did you get the charge? They're a perfect counter charge, right? If you can pin them in and stop them from charging, usually you can handle them.
Yeah, I never let them charge because, like I said, my turn 1, I put the Griffin in to the bloodletters and the Mangler Fiends. I deleted the Fiends, but then the Griffin was tying up the bloodletters with range of my 5+ ward. So, and you can only wound them on 4. So he just tied them up. And when he eventually killed them, they were pretty much all in combat with everything else. Like everything else had advanced stuff. And so they never got to charge the entire game.
Yeah.
So yeah, just tying up what I can. And he couldn't really. And what Cities is actually a hard matchup for him because a lot of his strategy is move up and then, blood tithe into you. But he can't move up because if he moves up, I just countercharge him on the end of his charge phase. So he can't pin me with the normal Khorne pinning move. So he had to play the little game differently. And I think that hurt his strategy a lot. He had to pull back and screen and couldn't pin me, where I got to then take over the battlefield where he's probably used to being able to pin his opponent in.
Yeah, and you got so many troops on the board. It's so hard to maneuver some of these bigger bases or these bigger units, and you are triggering, as you mentioned, the counter charges. And you've got so much movement between your Cavaliers as well as your Griffin. And then you've got this juicy center of just chaff, and yeah, I like it.
One thing to see, maybe if you go look at the games, my center, I always have these little lanes in my center that I can charge out of. So to hit my center, I can charge you back with Cavaliers from the back line. It's just all these little movement tricks that you can do with Cities, where this needs to be within 3 inches of this, but here's a 3-inch lane here. So this is on this side of this, but this is a charge lane for this. It's Cities has a lot of little techie order stuff.
And this goes back to the mental load we were talking about earlier, because, it's so easy to misplay or forget something or get into bloodlust where it's just like, I need to kill the thing. And actually the better option was to retreat or to do something that maybe isn't so obvious to you, but it would get you more points on an objective. It would zone out somebody. And that's where the duration really kicks in. So, you're feeling fresh. You've had plenty of steak, and you're able to grind out a win against Fabian.
Yeah. So I think going into Gavin, they you get a 5-minute break.
Yeah,
Gavin I didn't get a break, and Gavin had an hour and a half, 2-hour break. He's like, "Oh, just finished killing 160 zombies in 2 turns with steam tanks."
Yeah, you guys went straight in. It was a because the award ceremony was coming up, and I think you had to finish by X time. I thought there'd be a short break. It was nope, straight in. So actually, I think I ran out and got some dinner for some of the people in the Games Workshop area. I'm like, you guys have no time to have some dinner. So yeah, you guys went straight into the last game, the championship game. So it's you versus Gavin, Cities versus Cities, a fascinating display of top tier Age of Sigmar to the world. Cities versus Cities. Most importantly, you have advertised that the battle scroll is probably delayed because of you guys, and maybe some additional, maybe more. Sorry, when I say you guys, I mean Gavin and other people, because you can clearly see here that Steam Tanks and all of its friends was the last matchup in Hello Hearts, a very magic-y type Cities of Sigmar army. And a fascinating one. You've got 5 steam tanks, including one of them who's a leader. You've got the Hurricanum, which is just a little mortal wound wagon. You've got yourself your little battle mage. You've got your Warforger, and you've got the command corps. So we're seeing a double command corps. Out of curiosity, people are probably wondering, or maybe they are maybe they don't understand quite yet. Why are we seeing 2 units of command corps? Your list has it, this list has it, and a lot of cities' lists have a double command corps.
They're very cost-effective points, so I expect their points to go up in the Battle Scroll update. They'll probably adjust some of their rules. Like they have a 4-up command point deny, or command ability deny. That's board wide right now. I expect that to go to an aura. They can heal D3. They can heal 3 units D3. That was an LVO fact where you have to heal different units. For some people, hey, you can heal the same unit. I'd already been playing it, so having 2 of them helps. It helps them heal the steam tanks. So, and they can do some fighting. They have an 18 wound on a 4-up save for 110 points, so they're very cost effective. But going into LVO, I didn't go through every single list, but I went through most lists or most types of lists, and this was the only list that I didn't think I could beat. Just because I know how much damage steam tanks do. I had fought against steam tanks lists before, and I'm just surprised how much people don't realize how much damage steam tanks do. So I knew that this was going to be the hardest list for me to fight, and I did not really want to fight it. And I didn't think I was going to win, but didn't stop me from trying, and just trying to surround it.
So I want to unpack that a little bit in a second, but I just want to add that Game 8 was Nexus Collapse. So that's the last battle plan, Nexus Collapse. What about this particular list were you worried about? Was it the damage, and was it, as we talked about earlier, because the thing when you look at this list on paper, this doesn't hold objectives. The steam tanks are not monsters. You don't have a lot of troops. You are relying purely on a couple of heroes that are counting as 5, and then a couple of chaff. There's no summoning. It is just pure damage. And if you can withhold that damage or sustain that damage, you are going to claim the objective every single time over this list, unless your steam tanks take up those big bases to kind of block you and zone you off. So what about this list were you worried about going into this game? Was it just the damage?
So it's pretty much the damage that the steam tanks can do, because they can be like, and we delete that half of your army a turn. Because once you power them up, which you're pretty much doing, they're having 2 shots that do D3 plus 2 damage, and then they have 3d6 steam can shots. So the amount of damage that they can output is staggering, and it's all at range, and it's out at pretty good range. And it also has all the orders, so if you get too close, they charge you. If you shoot at them, he can shoot you back with the steam tank. He gets to use double commands from the steam tank commander. So you can't shoot the army. You can't melee the army, because steam tanks are actually good in melee. And you can't kill the steam tank because they have a 2+ save, and then unless you can mortal wound them off, like really fast, so they can't get killed from the free guild. That's pretty much your only take. And there's not a little armies that do directed mortal wounds. There's a lot of armies that do like AoE mortal wounds, but that won't hurt this list because man can't counter that. And so he can put up the steam tanks. Steam tanks have a native 2+ save. He can put them to a 1+ save with the Warforger. He can double all that defense to be on a 0+ save. So even at Red 2, he's saving on 2s. So like so much math is against killing them.
Yeah, and if you really wanted to through the battle mage, you could take the spell to make it ethereal, so it's an unrenderable 2-up. So the options are there to make a steam tank incredibly powerful. So how do you defeat this list? So before the actual game kicks in and you've had a whole 5 minutes to actually strategize on this particular game, what's the plan? You can't shoot them because they're going to shoot you back with an order. You can't charge them or a 2-up save and they're just going to charge you back. Your command corp's going to heal them. So even if you got into combat, it's a tough grind. What's going through your head on pulling this army apart?
So I need to pull it away from the Hurricanum. So I need to pull the steam tanks away from the heroes. So I won the defender roll off, and we had these really big, obnoxious, like plexiglass pieces of terrain that you cannot really see on the screen. But I put those in the middle of our deployment zone so that he could not make a bubble around the Hurricane and all the tanks that I had seen him do in all his other matchups. So I went with, you have to split your army up. He still managed to deploy everything wholly within 9 of the Hurricane, because it's still really good. But I just have to kind of punch and hold enough of it and stop him from free shooting at my army long enough that I can take points and objectives. So I think the mission helped Gavin a lot more, because if he wasn't able to delete the objectives on my side, I could just go up on points a lot faster. Leading, I went in and I sent the Griffin and a unit of Cavaliers to hit a steam tank and some command corps. I deleted the unit command corps, which I think really helped, since he didn't have healing on that side, so I was able to start grinding down them. He also had some really bad dice rolls. So when he tried to do all his spells, he didn't like get all his spells off turn 1, where he was trying to kill something with spells.
I remember the Hurricanum also failing a few of the Storm of Shem techs, I think. Like, there was a couple of rolls where I'm like, oh, that hurt.
Yeah, there's turn 2, he's like, okay, we're going to Storm of Urtek this one knight that has 2 wounds left. And he's like, okay, 2 pluses to D3 mortals per dice. He rolled 2 ones. So he didn't get any damage on that. And then I think later in the game, he tried to do that again. He was with like 3 or 4 dice, and he rolled like half of it once. So just I had some bad dice too. So I think there was bad dice in both plays, and I think the play was exceptional. I think all the luck actually balanced out. But yeah, just taking all the objectives and forcing him to spread out. And so I just surrounded all the steam tanks with as much as I could, so that you can only shoot like piecemeal of my army. So he couldn't just delete this threat, and like take from side of the board and just swing it. So, and that's really what it is forcing him to shoot what you want him to shoot, not what he wants to shoot. I think my favorite moment of this game is when he had a steam tank to shoot one of my command corps in combat with, and then I returned fire from the Pontifex with Duralia and killed both of his wizards. I shoot one on the Archmage and one on the Battle Mage. And since their wizards, 4 damage, they both had a wound on them. But see, that's just the mental load. So going into that is already set up. Like, on Gavin's turn, I'm financing our Duralia. People are like, why are you doing that? It's like, because this is going to do this to this. She had a counter charge order on her. So she was going to try to do something.
Yeah. No, it's awesome to hear, because I remember one of my very first videos of this particular General's Handbook, I was talking about, I think Darrelia will be a great asset in cities. Obviously, this is the old Darrelia when you could take one or the other. Now you've got to take dad and daughter. But it's such a great little utility piece to sniper out those wizards, especially for anyone who has spellcasting savant as their general, or slaughter of sorcery. Chuck on the finest hour. That is a great little piece of tech, and she can do damage. She doesn't move. She gets to double shoot as well, which is
No, they removed that. She just
they removed that. Oh, I hate that. Oh
no, she just double shoots all the time now.
Oh, that's even better. There you go. She's a good piece. My point is, she's a good piece. You normally get good value out of her. But yeah, those steam tanks, I can rest assured when that battle scroll comes out, surely they are closer to 300 each. So
actually, I think the better fix for the steam tanks is you maybe increase your points a little bit. If you remove the human keyword, I think they're fine.
I just know that Games Workshop changing rules is like a last resort. Like
they've done it before. They've removed keywords from units. I think the old Cities book, they removed some of that. I think they've done it in 40K, like the Drukhari. They removed some of the keywords from the Taloses because it's too good. And if you remove it from the steam tanks, means you can't get the heal from the command core. The Hurricane can't do them. They can't return fire. They can't get the +1 armor from the Warforger. They can still be their little steam tanky, do all this little damage, but they don't get all the benefits of being a human.
I agree with you. And if I was the person making the change, I would. That's exactly what removing the human keyword removes a lot of the synergies that make the steam tank truly amazing. But I just know the sequence order, and it's likely a points adjustment first. If the points adjustment doesn't work, then it might be the keyword. That's what I'm expecting, but who knows? They might prove me wrong.
No, and this is a great game. Gavin, there's lots of little moves here and there that you may not see in the stream that are very impactful. I think there was like a small pilot I did with the Wilder core to stop his command core from coming in. There's a time where I countercharged with Galen and sacrificed Galen to a steam tank, but that's so the steam tank couldn't countercharge into my other units. One of the things that it was a gamble for me, I think it was turn 4 or bottom 3. I countercharged with the Warforger into a steam tank, and then I piled it in to try to block the steam tank from getting to Hexbane's crew, the guy with the axe. And if he doesn't kill the Warforger, which mathematically he shouldn't, then I get that point. He loses 2 points. The Warforger's alive, and then I blizzard off his general. But he manages to kill the Warforger. So it was a gamble, didn't pay off. But we had lots of those little tricks in this game that if you go and watch it, that there's just lots of these little minutiae that me and Gavin do that it just makes it, I think, an amazing game to have been played.
If you have the few spare dollars, I would highly recommend you go and subscribe to the Warhammer TV on Twitch. I think it's like $7. I don't know what it is in your country. I think it's like $7 in my country. But I would pay it purely to watch this game because I think watching you and Gavin, and I didn't get to fully appreciate it because, I'm obviously talking and looking at the stream and actually not watching the game as a table boss. But it was from what I saw, it was a masterclass of micro decisions. It was, and people have probably heard me talk about this a lot, this game is not based on list. It's not about who has the best list. It's about who can pilot the list. And what makes a really good pilot is the people who can make good decisions. And it's not about executing a plan like you often see in 40K. It's who piles in first and which way they pile in and who activates and what you prioritize and all of those little things that lead up to a win or a loss. Both you and Gavin demonstrated, and even just like which objectives you burnt during the Nexus collapse. It was a wonderful game to watch. And again, highly recommend you go check it out. If you have a few spare dollars to subscribe for a month, just subscribe, watch it, and then cancel it. It was a good match. So
yeah, I think Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, you even get a Twitch subscription. You can do.
There you go. You get a free 1 month subscription. Go and subscribe with your Twitch Prime. Just watch this game. A really good game. Highly recommend.
Yeah, it came down to me winning with the grand strat of having one banner on the command core and Gavin having no command core. We both failed 2 tactics. I failed 1 tactic. I think I was trying to do banners held high, so I needed a 2-up or a 3-up, and I failed both of those rolls to get that tactic. So the 2-up was Pontifex's getting her aura up for +2 move, and this allowed me to get the command core onto an objective. Or if I retreat, with command core also lets you retreat an extra D3. If they retreated enough, they would have been able to retreat onto that objective, which would have given me that point and given me also that objective. And I think there was another point where I was 1 inch too far away from being able to do surround and destroy from like 2 different units.
That's crazy. And again, this is why I said go check out this game. I highly recommend it. I am conscious of time, so I'm going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions that come up from Discord. One, a lot of these questions did come from Discord, so there's one, don't judge them. It's about me, so we'll hear what they have to say. So I assume you're going to go to the LVO next year, or if you can, you would. Do you have an idea of what army you might bring next year, or is it too far away?
it's too far away because there's probably going to be a new edition change. So it's going to be something that I enjoy to play. I play armies that I enjoy how they play.
Yeah, it's so hard. Like if you asked me a month ago what I'm going to play at this Blood Rights Teams tournament, I probably would have said, I don't know, Gits or Gargants, maybe Cities. Now, like I saw the Crone and I'm like, okay, time to dust off my Daughters of Cain. Like I want to run this Bird Lady. But then Stormcast might bring out, look like an Ionis, like that came out of nowhere. So the Dawnbringers and how it's kind of touching the game. Like if Valkyrie, if Valkyrie comes, I may be starting up a Corn army. So yeah, it's so hard to pick.
I don't have a hard time limit. We can keep going as long as you have questions.
No. So I'm always conscious of people's time. We always go for go forever. Like this I love talking Warhammer so much. Like I look at these podcasts, like man, they go for like 3 hours, but they go so quickly. Like you look at the clock, like we talked for 3 hours, and there's still more we could talk about.
Yeah.
All right, Cities questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
Tyrell Black. What do you think? What do you think Fusiliers, with all the units they require to be good, are they a trap? Why or why not? So I guess we're talking about some of the synergistic bubbles to make Fusiliers great.
I think Fusiliers, going heavy in Fusiliers is a trap, just because so much is into them. They can be countered in certain ways. They can be oppressive in certain ways. I think bringing a unit of one of them, maybe a reinforced, but not going heavy in to all the buffs, like the command trait for the +1 to wound, just bringing them there and using them as screens. I think they're a little too expensive to be screens. And that's why I like Wilder Core. They kind of do the same thing. Less damage, but still do objective control.
I played a Fusilier list where it was 30 Fusiliers and a Gotrek in the middle, and then like Knights on the side, and a Steam Tank as well. I'm like, I hate this. Like as a Gargant player, I'm like, I'm either going to get shot or I get close to you and then a Gotrek comes at me and then the Knights countercharge. Luckily, I was able to pull it apart. But man, you can't just go in all on Fusiliers. They are a good little core, but they are expensive, right? 170 points right now. You double reinforce that. That's 1/4 of your army. Yeah, they ignore rend, and yeah, they do a lot of good damage. But
they ignore rend to shooting, but no one's going to be shooting your Fusiliers. You have counter shoot.
Yeah, but and in the particular game that I was talking about, there's also a Gotrek, right? So if I'm going to go charge them down, well, I've got to deal with this little dwarf ball of death.
Yeah.
Please don't bring it. Please don't bring Gotrek, people. Please don't. Let's not encourage him back. The other question from Tyrell is, are Iron Breakers worth having a look for a tanky screen? And I think some of those orders do make them quite nice. But I know you said some feelings about the dwarves and the elves. Where are you landing with the Iron Breakers?
I think going for a tanky screen is a misnomer and a trap. It's either a screen or it's going to try to tank with you. Like trying to bring something just to tank is not really a good idea. If you want to tie something up, that's good, but the dwarves are too slow to tie things up. Like just get something cheap as a screen that's a throwaway.
Didn't you used to run Phoenix Guard as like cheap screens?
But they weren't always screens. They were also the damage. They were the list. They were with lots of little tech and damage. But I didn't just run them as throwaway screens.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not. You don't run a 170, 200 point unit just to screen. No, but no, agreed. I just wish there was more dimensions to the dwarves. I think that's the thing. Like the gyros are really cool, and you see a lot of gyrocopters or gyro bombers in people's lists. But outside of that, like it really does seem like the dwarves have kind of gone back to their mountain holds in this book.
Yep.
Do you have any hints or tips or tricks when it comes to issuing orders? Again, this probably is that extra layer of complexity that newer Cities players are still trying to work out and getting that right balance. Do you like how would you tell me to issue effective orders?
So you think about when you're deploying what orders you want to do turn one. So when I'm deploying, I'm already figuring out what orders I'm going to be playing. And I don't always know the turn order, and that might change a little bit. And when the turn wraps up, I've already started thinking about what orders to play. So the sooner you start thinking about the orders, the better. And it's like, what can you do with the orders? So also get your heroes within 3 inches of as many units as you pretty much can. One of the best orders is the +1 attack, but that's only usable in your charge phase if a unit has not fought yet that battle. So it's actually pretty tricky to use. So you pretty much need to use it pretty early on. And that's for punching units. So it tends to go on like a Griffin, or I put it on like Galen, and then he's up in front, and the Knights move up, and then he gives it to the Knights that have stringed out near him, and then they make their charge with +1 attack. Or it goes on the Griffin. Where you think you're going to need to counter charge, bring it, even if you may not need it. If they have no shooting, you don't need to worry about turn fire. But if they have shooting, think about what you want to return fire, what do you want them to shoot, what do you want them not to shoot. Do you want to leave something outside of 3 as a shooting trap, or do you want to castle up? There's just so many little orders. Do you need to do the fight last order with the shooting attacks if you have a heavy shooting army? But that only matters if you're going into melee. But then is the +1 attack order better? You have to practice. Like the city's orders require lots and lots of practice.
I think it also comes down to this building. I think you've got to sit down and go, right, what is the ideal, or what is the perfect order or orders? So this unit is good for X and Y, almost like a traffic light system. And here are the ones that I would use traditionally with my Fusiliers or my Knights or my whatever. In certain matchups or in certain as the game's unfolding, these ones then might get prioritized. Because I can imagine this would be analysis paralysis, and it's hard enough for some people to pick the right battle tactic, let alone thinking about issuing orders and what happens. And being able to read the game as it unfolds is a skill that is built up over time. So I would probably recommend at minimum just start with like something as a baseline, and then to your point, practice.
So
reflect.
Yeah, I have a stack of orders I can take that. You have no shooting, I remove all the counter shoots from that order. So then when I'm looking at my orders, these are the orders that I need for this game.
Yeah, it's great. It's literally what I do. I've got battle tactic cards. I've talked about it in the past. If my opponent doesn't have a certain thing, cool. Battle tactic is away. I've now got my hand and what I can play and at when.
And sometimes it's a bluffing game. Maybe they think you're going to counter shoot, so you put in a bunch of melee stuff and go smash them. I played Gavin round 1. I didn't fire a single shooting attack because he had everything with the range of a hero. I knew what he could do with 16 tanks. So it's also a bit of a bluffing game.
You're right. Like people might think the Knights are going to countercharge, but actually it's the Wild Corp or it's something else. So you can always play the mind games. I like it. What city?
Have at least 6 heroes in your city's army. I have 7 because Dralia. But the more heroes, the better. Lean into your orders. They are what make the cities function. Yeah. You've
got to be like when I write my cities list, it's like all fantasy battles where you have a unit and there's always a hero that babysits the unit. You're always having a 1-to-1 ratio, power pairs, as people might call it, or I call it, or somebody. But hero with unit. You've got to. The orders are too strong without you want to issue them. I mean, obviously Talia allows you to double issue, and the Steam Camp Command Corps can double issue, but yeah, agreed. What city would you love to play in a non-competitive game?
Probably Excelsior, because I like reading into the cav and the monsters having an extra wound. It's also easier on the mental load because I'm just going to smash and be tough.
Keep going.
Maybe Settler's Game, because I'd want to bring in the twins from Lumineth to double up on the command points. Because they have ability. Leppänen, is good. I don't know if that is a non-competitive, because that could almost be a competitive game, especially if you bring Ionis.
That's the thing. Like without Ionis, it's like it's not a it's a very casual game. You add Ionis to the mix, and that's changed the game for that city. That city is now very, very effective. I don't think we see many of those at LVO. I don't recall seeing an
There's one
Ionis city.
Leppänen.
Was it?
I don't know if he had Ionis in him, but there was one Leppänen.
Yeah, I saw plenty of Ionis's in the Stormcast, but I don't recall seeing a city's Leppänen with Ionis. Interesting. What do you expect from the next battle scroll going in for cities? So you've already alluded to the human keyword for Steam Tank. Do you think there's some things that will go up in points, go down in points? Is there anything that maybe might get a rules adjustment for the good? Some things that maybe like we don't see a lot of, like, I don't know, Dreadlord on Black Dragon or Sorceress on Black Dragon. Do you see any boosts going there? Or
Command Core will get nerfed. They'll go up in points. They'll have some rules adjustments. I think the Alchemist will probably go up again. Steam Tanks will have some adjustments. I'm hoping some Elves get some stuff. Really, maybe the Black Dragon goes down because I think it's too many points. It's not as good as a Griffin and more expensive than a Griffin, and I'm just like, why? But some of it's good. I think if Cold Ones go down, they'll be taken. Blackguard, maybe. Executioners need to go down. Every single Dwarf needs to go down. Like, if you want to make those playable, they all have to go down in points. But cities is overall fine. I think Flagellants need to go down. They cost the same as Steel Helms, and Steel Helms are better in every single way. I would love to bring some Flagellants. It's just not cost effective.
Well, if you run them in what's the city? The 5-up rally city.
It's still not that good. Because you have to bring a unit of 20 or 30 of them to gain from that rally, and they still just evaporate because they have no save.
Yeah, but it's fun.
It's fun. It's not good.
They're so dumb. They're so dumb. They're absolutely dumb. Yeah, I mean, nothing would please me more seeing Flagellants get a points reduction, and Steel Helms are already attacks as it is, right? Like, not people don't like running them. They don't do that much.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Couple final questions is all right. You ready for this one? Gato asking, do you have any more tips rolling sixes?
Roll more dice. It's weight of dice. If you want sixes, bring Wilder Corpse and charge with them with the +1 attack order. They have 41 attacks in the melee. And then if you get your aura up, they'll be doing 6 to 7 mortal wounds for this tiny little melee shooting unit that no one would expect. Also, they have dogs. So,
yeah, I actually think there should be a rule that you can't kill dogs. So if you go to kill my dog, I want to raise an issue with the judge. This should be illegal.
Or they ignore the first wound they take every round.
Yeah, like I always thought about like painting a dog like one of my dogs. I'm like, no, because then someone will kill it and then I'll get angry and then like I'll just rage quit. Like, you're not allowed to do this. This is illegal. No. I need something more like the Free Guild Marshal on foot, where he's just got like a support idiot. You can't kill the support idiot. It's just a token. It's just there. So you can't morally kill my thing. You kill the human, not the thing.
So make your dog one of your support tokens. He's the one who sends out from your marshal. It's like, go give this people orders, and it's a dog running around giving orders to the humans.
See, this is the big brain thinking I expect from the winner of LVO. This is how we do it, and not kill my dog. So, but either way, it should be illegal. You can't kill wild corp dogs. While we're being stupid, and then I'll go to a legitimate question. 42, real question. Did ask me, have you ever met me at LVO? So have you ever met Coach at LVO? And how is he in all his glory? Legitimate question.
I've met Coach twice at LVO. I've met him briefly last year, and then more seriously this year. And he's great. He's all the energy and all the enthusiasm that he brings to the game. And it's great that he comes and even travels across the country or across the globe to visit us and come to LVO. So
He says this only because his wife strong-armed me that I have to bring Tim Tams and mint slices to Atlanta. So the interview is only happening because I had to bribe to get this exclusive, which alludes me and brings me to, I'm not alluding, I'm going directly. Why do I keep saying allude? I don't know. It's one of those weird words that have just crept into my vocabulary this stream. But the last real question I do have for you, and talking about Atlanta, where I have to bring you Tim Tams and mint slices, is one of the cool things a part of winning the LVO is you did get yourself a golden ticket to go compete in Atlanta in the finals of the World Championship. So that is mid-November. I believe there's about 150 tickets being issued, which is, I think last year we were at 86 people attended. There could be up to 200 tickets issued. So that's, I mean, not everyone will be able to attend, cost, time, work, but, you know, it will be a bigger tournament. What are you expecting from the World Championships, given that, one, you might have seen the coverage from last year, two, it's grown and people might take it a bit more serious? Because I think some people didn't quite know what to expect. And I think some people, especially the French, came in and just kicked absolute buttocks. America didn't do that well. So I think vengeance might be on the taste buds of America. Where are you at? What are you thinking? And what are you expecting from the World Championships?
I'm excited to go. I think it's going to be a bunch of really great games. I think it's going to be a bunch of games like the top 8. Actually, for me, the top, well, last 4 games, because Mick is also considered one of the top players in the world. So it's just going to be a bunch of high-quality games that I'm excited to go see and go. And I'm glad that I got my gold ticket. That was actually like the funnest reward, because even though I won 4 GTs last year, none of them gave me a golden ticket. So I didn't get to go last year. And then the year before, I barely missed it when I lost to Gavin, and that World Championship was much, much smaller, but it was actually in Albuquerque where I lived. So I actually went and just watched them and hung out with them when they played there.
Oh, no way. I actually got asked to go to New Mexico that year, but I was on the other side of Australia in Perth, so I would have had to have flown across country because I was at a work conference, then literally jump onto an overnight flight and arrive just as the start of it was the US finals. That was the US finals. This year, last year was the first World Champs. Yeah, like it did change a little bit and it got obviously much bigger, but yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see you. I'm excited to see kind of what you bring. And obviously it's such a great reward, one, for an outstanding year, two, an outstanding performance of LVO, but three, you can now confidently kind of not retire, but like you don't have to worry about striving to get this golden ticket. The pressure's off. You can have absolute fun. You can still run the things you want to run, and you've got this guaranteed spot. So you can start thinking about, here's your new big goal, right? You're now focused on how do I get to the champs and do incredibly well. And who knows what GHB 24 brings? Who knows if 4th edition is going to be around by then? How the game might have changed. And I think for list builders like you, if there is a big wholesale change, I can't wait to see how people adjust, because they've won it off certain things in the last 12 months. And now there might be changes. It could be a minor tweak. It could be a wholesale change. You just never know.
The thing I like about the championships is that they're double elimination. And I think that is a much better skill parity of showing your skill, because it's a dice game. Sometimes they go badly, but having 2 chances is just, I think, just much better for actually getting the skilled players at the top, as opposed to who got lucky and brought something that is very good at that point in time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I did really enjoy the double. I mean, obviously it added a lot more time in a lot of games. We had the champion, Spoon went, Nicholas went 12 games. So that's a lot of Warhammer. And I think one day he played 4 games in a row from like 8 o'clock till midnight. So it is a lot of load on you. But to determine truly the winner, single elimination can be a bit rough. So who knows what the year's going to look like, and it should be exciting. Any final things you want to say? I mean, this has been an awesome discussion. We could go into so many things about the LVO and competitive and list and cities, and like, there's obviously a lot of things we can talk about. But is there anything that you want to say, and if nothing more, any shout outs that you want to make to your club, to your community, and if people want to chat to you further, where can they find you on the internet?
Well, they can find me on your Discord. I generally go and check some of the Discords. I have the Raywin handle, which I've had forever. So people in the cities know me. You're welcome to at me, and I'll try to get back to you all your little questions. Play the games you love. Enjoy playing games. Too many people worry about Math Hammer. I think you need to do less Math Hammer and more have fun. Like, I brought Witch Hunters because I thought they were cool and decently good. Were they mathematically the best thing? No. But did they give me the most options? Maybe. They gave me a lot of options, which I'm all for. Yeah, I have a great scene here in Albuquerque. I'm hoping to get more players. We got some group of people that we have a local lounge that we can play games and just go to and have our own key code and play games anytime. I think the scene in Albuquerque is pretty good. Maybe we can get Andrew back in. So some people don't know this. Andrew Stanford's also from Albuquerque. He won LVO twice in the past. So we have 3. Albuquerque's won 3 of the 6 or 7, 8 LVOs that there's been.
Okay, what's in the water of Albuquerque? All right, I didn't know this. All right, what all right, last question now. I still want you to shout out your gaming crew, but what's in the water of Albuquerque that you're going around winning big tournaments?
We're a mile high, so we have more stamina when we go down to sea level. So we probably don't get
altitude training.
Altitude training. So I think that's the secret sauce, is altitude training.
Things that I would have never expected to hear from you, but we might have just unlocked. Okay, all right. We might have to do some training camps where we go up and hike up to, some of the biggest mountains in the world, and we'll start. Okay, there might be something in here.
Carry your army on your back with a table.
Well, I mean, like you might have seen, I think some people have done like cruise hammers and, certain like Castle Con where you go out and like you stay at a little, like a little castle or like a scout kind of, what are they called when what's the American thing like when you go camping and like with scouts and I don't know, like boot camp, a camp. Maybe I will lead an expedition up to, I don't know, Mount Kilimanjaro or, Kosciuszko, and we'll do high altitude Warhammer training in preparation for GHB 24.
Yeah, and
let me know in the comments if you want to come in and hike up, and we'll play in the real mountaintops.
Yeah, maybe. Sounds like fun. Get some time off for that.
That's terrible.
As long as it's not snowing.
Well, that's all about the training. It's all part of the training. But shout out your people. Who are they? And you can talk on Discord and tell me more.
Yeah, shout out to the club, Battle Shock Immune, that they're all doing. John and Kenny have put together the space. They've started running events. They run all kinds of different gaming events to grow it. They're trying to get an RTT every month or two, which is great and helps. That's how I got practice with cities and getting the orders down for LVO, because I was not fast at the orders when I started trying to play that list. And then, yeah, we have a bunch of other group friends. Like Evan went out to LVO. My friend Rob and Emma came out and joined us for their first LVO, so it was great for them to come out. Yeah, just a great group of people. We got a new space. I used to host here at my house. We on Sundays get like 4 games going. But now we have a hobby space. So I'm converting into more of a traditional lounge space.
Awesome. That's so cool, Jeremy. This is so cool. Thank you for your time. I will put Discord link in the description. I will try to remember that. You might have to message me your handle just to make sure I get it. Discord can be funny sometimes searching up names. But thank you for your time. I hope people enjoyed the reflection on LVO with the winner of 2024. Again, massive congratulations for winning the world's largest Age of Sigmar tournament. Congratulations on scoring your golden ticket. Hopefully I will see you in Atlanta. and I'll bring those Tim Tams and mint slices. And I can't wait to see how you start innovating, whether it's with cities or you deviate into something else. You always bring a very interesting view on list building, and that to me is all part of the hobby. Let's not just run all the net lists. Let's all find the unearthed goodness in those battle tomes, because there's a lot. There is so much in battle tomes, and you saw it. Like McGonk did incredibly well with Stormcast. Who expected Stormcast to hit some of the top 10? And that book's been around since the start of 3rd edition, so there's still good things in battle tomes. Let's log off. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to hear more about my experience, I will have a video coming up very soon where I'll be talking with SoCal, and we'll have our own personal reflection on the LVO and how it all went and our games. But I hope you enjoyed this reflection of the champs' path to victory, and we'll wish you congratulations either in Discord or in this video. All right, Jeremy, thank you for your time, and I'll chat to you all again soon.
Yeah, thank you. Talk to you soon. See you in Atlanta. And see everyone else in Atlanta too, and other events. Just come up and say hi. Introduce yourself.
I'm gonna press stop recording now. I almost pressed it, and then I would have missed all that goodness. All right, bye. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AOS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a 1-1 on a spellcast.